This video will illustrate how to replace the radiator on a 1995 Geo Metro. These instructions should also apply to the 96 and 97, and possibly another year or two on either end. I am not a car person, I am not a mechanic, I am not an automotive enthusiast. I'm doing this out of necessity, and that's also how I learned this. This is a firearms channel, so don't expect more content of this kind on this channel. The Metro is fairly easy to work on. It's a very small car, so everything on the car is small. Nothing's particularly heavy. Also, not much of it is particularly expensive. A new replacement radiator is $120 and up at the parts stores. Careful shopping on the internet may bring that down to $90 or perhaps even $70, but then you have to wait for it to arrive, which doesn't work when you have work on Monday and the car is your job. Pulling a used radiator from a junkyard can be as low as half the price of a new radiator. The price was $47 with a $10 core deposit, which I could not recover because I needed the old cracked radiator to drive over there and get it, and to drive back. There was also a $4.44 environmental fee. Don't get me started on the enviro-fascists. Cost for the radiator was $61.42. You should only need two tools for this: a 10mm socket and ratchet, or even a 10mm box wrench, and a pair of pliers. When acquiring a used radiator, inspect it carefully for the same kind of damage you're hoping to replace. For example, cracks in the plastic housing for the aluminum core. Get the car somewhere you can work on it, and let it cool for an hour or two. Elevating the front end may be useful, as you're going to have to reach under there to disconnect the lower hose. Watch out for kitties. After everything is cooled, begin by draining the coolant by getting under the car and opening this valve right here. If your catch pan is clean enough, your coolant might be reused. That's probably going to take a while. Go have a sandwich. Once most of the coolant is drained, you'll have to remove the lower hose, which is held on with this spring clamp. Grab the clamp with pliers, compress, and walk it back some. Then wrestle the thing off, which will release more coolant into your catch pan. The upper hose does not have the standard clamp because I replaced this and they didn't have the correct one in stock, so they sold me a different one, which turned out to be slightly oversized, so I got a conventional hose clamp, which is removed with a 1/4-inch socket or a screwdriver. Kitty. While we're down here, note how the radiator rests on these two socket things with these rubber bumpers. That's all that's holding in the bottom of the radiator. Top of the radiator is held in with these two clamps, which have the same kind of bumper. Kitty. With the coolant drained, remove the upper hose. Remember, normally the upper hose is going to have the same kind of spring clamp as the lower hose. There may be some more coolant leakage when you remove the upper hose. Park that somewhere. Then there's this little overflow hose here, which leads into the reservoir, which is underneath here. and you just ease that off. Then remove the bolts for the upper clamps. These zip ties are necessitated by a bent frame down below. Finally, remove the electrical connector for the fan. You lift the clamp thing here, and that pops right off. Then the whole radiator lifts right out, only weighs a few pounds. Now your replacement radiator is probably going to come without the fan, with its housing and shroud. The junkyard wanted another $35 or so for the fan, so I had to unbolt that sitting right there at the counter. Look at this cat. Every time he goes outside, comes back in, his tail looks like a Christmas tree. So I'm going to have to recycle this fan, reuse it, and it's released with the same 10mm socket or wrench you already have. The 1995 and 1997 are the same. I got lucky at the junkyard. And I stared at this before I went there, so I knew what it looked like, though I didn't take any actual measurements. So with those 4 bolts removed, the fan lifts right off the back of the radiator. Then you take your replacement radiator, which is hopefully not in as bad a shape, unless of course you bought a brand new one. And the radiator's out of a 1997 wreck. This is a 95 car. As you can see, the 95 and 97, and presumably the 96, are the same dimensions. And then you just bolt that back together in the obvious way. A Phillips screwdriver may also be useful. Once your fan and radiator are reassembled, you just slide them back in, and here are the 2 rubber bumpers, which I illustrated a moment ago, down below. You can see down in there, and there are the sockets the lower bumpers go into. Then you replace the upper clamps, like so. Reconnect the small overflow hose. Reconnect the electrical connection for the fan. Reconnect your upper hose. Make sure it's clamped securely. Underneath, make sure this valve is closed. Reconnect the lower hose with its spring clamp, which you need the pliers for. And here again is a second look at the lower bumpers in their sockets. Now the radiator is replaced. Now you fill with your recommended mix of coolant and hope for the best. That's all. Kitty in the tall grass.